You may think if you live in a high price market like New York City or San Francisco, there's no way you can invest in real estate. You're probably thinking, imagining the worst, really, that emergency call from a tenant that's interrupting your very important meeting at your day job, and imagining that situation would be 10 times worse if that tenant lived 3,000 miles away. So, in today's video, I'm going to share how smart investors are choosing to invest in out of state real estate to give themselves more options. So, by investing in real estate in another state than where they live, they're finding more opportunities to build wealth than they would have if they limited themselves to places where they only could get to within an hour. So, let's get started. I'm Veronica Woods. Welcome to the Real Estate Wisdom Channel, where I provide tips about building a more profitable rental property portfolio, as well as give updates about what's going on in the Philadelphia metro area, including suburban Delaware County. This is the first video of a series how I explore how you can build a profitable rental portfolio out of state. And I came up with this topic because a growing number of my property management clients don't live in Pennsylvania, although they want to invest in the Philadelphia metro area. They may have lived here at some point, maybe college or graduate program, and then moved away, or they just identified Philadelphia as an attractive market. Either way, they not only started with one property, they've gone back and buy additional property, and so I've been able to help support that dream of, again, building a rental property portfolio, even if they're a plane ride away. So I came up with 4 myths that I hear that are in the heads of many busy professionals, because a lot of them have demanding jobs that really don't allow them to be as hands-on as they want to be. Even if the property was in their own locale, the truth of the matter is they would most likely need a team. So if that's you, then these 4 myths may speak even more closely to you. So let me go over the 4 myths and debunk them one by one. Myth number 1 is that you can't build a reliable team from afar. That's flat out not true, because I would say the same skill it takes to build a team of professionals to help to support you in different parts of creating cash flow for your properties. It's pretty much the same process if they were 3 miles away or 300 miles away. A lot of times the key is going to be referrals and recommendations from other local professionals. There's online forums like Bigger Pockets. A lot of the local investor groups have Facebook pages where people are always kind of bigging up professionals that they have had success for. So if you know you want to invest in a certain area, I recommend joining those groups. The real tough part is to kind of seeking out who you may need before you actually need them, because you want to make sure you don't go through your vetting process too quickly and overlook some red flags. So the key is starting early. Another tip is to start with that investor friendly agent, because oftentimes if you forge that relationship up front with somebody you trust, they will recommend everybody in their network to help support their other clients as well to be successful. So that means a lender, a contractor, an attorney, a property manager. So having kind of a full potential team that are used to working together, which is probably a subject that I covered in another video, is really key to your success. The other thing that to keep in mind is don't treat it so much like a transaction. I know a lot of times investors are leery, or people are leery about committing to a professional because they think maybe they could do better, or maybe, I changed my mind. But really, to get the most value out of professionals, they want a relationship too. So it's kind of a two-way street And I would say they would be interviewing you as well. But the myth that you will be less effective in vetting a person, especially with technology and Zoom. So it's not to say that you can never see their face and you're just talking to somebody on the phone. You can very well select a solid team from afar. Myth number 2 is out of state investing is inherently too risky. The truth is that risk really comes not from the distance, but from people skipping steps in due diligence and straying too far away from their initial goals and objectives. Now, I get it. It's quite natural to think about some unknown market thousands of miles away. You just don't feel comfortable that you know that you'll ever know it the same as the market that you live in. Now, if you think about, some of my clients, some of my New York clients, where the entry point to buy a piece of property directly is so high that it takes a lot of them out of the game with actually buying a property on their own. They would have to buy in with a syndication or buy with a group of people. But if they really thought that buying individual investment property made financial good sense for them, the only way they could do it is to look at other markets. So in that case, it's actually a wise decision to look at a market that fits their investing criteria. And speaking of investment criteria, it's important to know what your budget is and what your risk tolerance is and stick with it. So when I'm working with a client that's considering the Philadelphia market, um, I'm going to help them validate or kind of reconfirm or stay in the lines that they said initially was their investment criteria. So, for example, I kind of go through a checklist, literally, and sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, to kind of match up what they said that they just, was too much for them to handle. So, for example, if there's a property that if they said originally they didn't want to take on anything but minor cosmetic repairs, and a property comes up that needs a gut rehab, I'm saying, all right, well, we need to strike that one out because that doesn't meet your criteria. You said you only wanted to spend X amount of dollars on repairs. Or another property where the down payment plus acquisition cost is double what the liquid capital they had to bring to the table to buy anything. I calculate the math and say, all right, we need to strike that one out too because you're not going to be comfortable going that far out your budget. So let's pass on that one as well. I think a trend is that you need to be comfortable if something doesn't fit your criteria, no matter how hyped somebody can be about an area. If it doesn't fit your criteria, you pass. You go on to the next one, and that meets your criteria. Then again, that's how you mitigate risk by again sticking to your initial plan for investing. Myth number 3, that it's impossible to really know what's going on in your property when it's thousands of miles away. The truth is, you could drive down the block of where your property is once a week and still not really know what's going on in the lives of the family that's living there at your property. The key is to build systems that allow you to document what's going on in your property over time, just kind of snapshots in time. A lot of times that involves having a team and technology. So there's things like photos, video walkthroughs, the financial reports that your property manager gives you at least on a monthly basis. These are all kind of snapshots that tell a story of what's going on in your property. And it's your job as the owner to review that information, at least for the financial information, at least once a month. It's not good enough just to, okay, I'm getting a check from the property manager, I'm good. No, really kind of look at the trend of how your tenant is paying rent. A lot of times you'll see that detail in the report. Maybe they're sending you photos from repairs that are done. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of get that insight, even if you haven't been to the property in years. And I mentioned that an extreme of a client who hadn't been in one of their properties in 5 years, and he actually lived 5 minutes away from the property. Now, in that case, he actually didn't have anybody go in the property in that time period. He was thinking everything was all good because he was collecting rent every month. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be you, but you want to have a method of, a couple of times a year getting, having somebody in the property, whether it's taking care of a repair or doing an inspection, and kind of documenting what they see. And that's something that I do, for the properties I manage. Every time somebody's going in the house, it's an opportunity to document what's going on there at the time. Now, in terms of, can you buy a property sight unseen and then, really never have gone to the property? It's possible. And I do recommend, if you can, for my clients, that they actually do look at the property before they buy it in person. It's really hard to get them in there after a tenant lives in there, one practically. But I think it's just kind of a meeting of the mind, especially in the beginning of just looking at the property once in person, seeing that the opportunity you see in photos is really matches up with reality. To do that once, and then I think you're gravy about relying on your team the rest of the way. But that's just something that I recommend to people and encourage people, like, hey, can you get out here at least once to see the property before you close? But again, there's definitely systems and team that you can put in place to make sure that you know what's going on with your property. And myth number 4 is that real estate investing is only for the experience. The truth is, ironically, that a lot of times I see it's the local investors doing more winging it and exposing their inexperience than on the hands of real estate investors. Mainly because most of them kind of know from a practical point of view that they need help, and they're getting help most likely from professionals. Now, I will say the risk of being inexperienced as an real estate investor is really along the due diligence, because you may not be knowledgeable enough to really kind of cut through the fluff that one of these professionals is selling you, and really get down to, like, is this person going to be good to me? Is this person good at their job? So I'll go into more into that in another video, but that's really where I think the risk of the inexperience is, of not doing thorough enough vetting. But if you're a person that's kind of used to um, delegating and outsourcing and making decisions and hiring people in areas where you're not necessarily the expert, but you know what kind of outcomes you need, and that really becomes your barometer of how you're choosing folks, then you don't have to be able to totally be expert and do the job of your property manager to hire one out of state. But again, before you kind of put your full reliance on your boots on your ground team, you're going to want to make sure that you vet their experience. So maybe you don't have the experience, but you want to make sure that you have a very experienced out of state investing team to support you. Now, I ran through the 4 myths that all can be debunked with a plan and intention to run an effective real estate business. So let's recap some of the truths that I talked about on the video. 1, your team can absolutely be built remotely. 2, the risk isn't about geography, it's about due diligence. 3, you can have visibility and maintain some control, even if you never set foot on site after the tenant moves in. And lastly, you don't have to be a seasoned pro to start investing in out of state real estate. Now, you do need focus, which is why that's the subject of the next video in the series about how to select good initial investment criteria. So that video should be appearing on the screen now. You can hop right over and learn more about how to select the right market for you. And the right market, right criteria for you to identify good deals. So as always, thanks for watching. Happy investing.